Hello, it's John and Phil, and it's Thursday, July 23rd, and we just want to talk to our church family. We know that the COVID-19 situation has extended well into the summer, and early on we were trying to communicate with you and let you know what we're thinking and why we're doing certain things, and it's been a while, so we just wanted to touch base with you today and update you. And the first question that we wanted to start with was why aren't we meeting in the building yet? So Phil's going to talk to us about that.
Yeah, so back at the beginning of the pandemic, we looked at 4 biblical principles that we laid out. First, a command to respect governing authorities from Romans 13. Second, a command to gather from Hebrews 10:24, not neglecting to meet together. Third, a command to love one another, as it says in Romans 13. Love does not do wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is fulfilling the law. And then also a command to walk wisely before the unbelieving world. And that was from Colossians, and I forgot to write down the note there, but we felt that meeting outside really gave us the best way to honor those 4 principles. First off, we're looking at the restrictions that the governor has put out, and we've been able to, for the most part, keep pretty close to what those restrictions are. Second, we've been gathering together as one body without having to do multiple services and not having to miss out on connecting with different people. Third, we've been providing a safe way for those in our body that are vulnerable to come to worship, especially those that are going through chemo treatments and things like that. They've been able to stay in their cars and stay safe. And fourth, we've been seeking to demonstrate to an outside world that we're taking care in this pandemic, that we care about them. And we've even had some comments from people that are kind of newer to church who've just said, hey, we really appreciate what you're doing at the 4 Mile property. And so we just felt that with all those principles in mind, that's some of the reasons why we've chosen to meet outside. But John, what are some of the other reasons why we've chosen to continue to meet outside?
Yeah, as we were planning to possibly meet in our building, one of the things we were going to have to go without was our kids' ministries. So families were going to have their kids sit with them in the service, and our outdoor service has worked out really well from that. Families have told us it's been really helpful to be able to have their car and their kids around. So that's worked out well because we don't have the kids' ministries. Also, the governor and the government has given us some mandates, and part of that is masks inside and the social distancing, and so that limits what we can do in the building. And again, being outside with the combination that some people can sit in chairs and others can stay in cars, that really has helped resolve that issue. At our property over there, we do have space that we can keep the distance. We're in the building. That really is going to be a challenge. Also, one of the issues related to churches is the singing. Large group of people all projecting in the same room. And again, outdoors gives us an opportunity to do that without having to have that concern. And then just the logistics. When we were planning to meet indoors in our building, we were talking about possibly a Saturday service and 2 Sunday morning services that involved staying spread out, but also the cleaning that had to go on in between. And so just all of those logistics have really given way to outdoors has worked so well that we don't have to worry about those things. And weather has been great, so unbelievable so far. We thank God for it and trust that He'll continue to do that, but we've not had inclement weather at all that's caused us to cancel the service yet, so we're thankful for that. Phil, when could we think about possibly meeting in our building now?
Yeah, so at this point, we are still planning on continuing the outdoor services through the end of August. Throughout this whole time, our elders have been meeting at least 1 to 2 times a month and looking at the statistics, looking at what's going on, what the governor's saying, all those kind of things. And we're going to continue to do that throughout the month of August as we evaluate what's going to happen in September and moving forward. Now, we do have a couple factors to consider. Those 4 biblical principles that we outlined earlier in relation to government mandates and how all those 4 principles go together. And trying to weigh all of them appropriately. And even as you weigh those 4, you may have a different opinion of which one to give a higher weight to. And that's something that we've, as elders, have been wrestling through. And then secondly, can we have enough volunteers and safety protocols in place to open up nursery and kids programming? Because I think one of the keys, if we are able to come back at the building, is to be able to provide kids programming while we're doing that. And then third, as we start to look at the building, then when can we start to have ABS meet? And when can we start to do those programs? So those are all in discussion among the elders. We had planned to launch a discipleship pathway in May, but COVID happened and we weren't able to do that. And so we're still going to be looking at how do we transition ABS and home groups into life groups once we can start meeting again. But I do want to encourage you, right now is a great time to start D groups. All the D groups that I know of have continued to meet throughout the pandemic, sometimes on Zoom, sometimes people are meeting outdoors, socially distanced, others have met in homes. But this is a great time to be in a D group with 3 to 4 other men, if you're a man, or women, if you're a woman, to really do discipleship. And if you'd like to start one, we'd like to ask you to contact John. He'll get you all started and help you get going with that. And at some point, as this continues, weather's going to force us to come indoors. So when that time comes, we'll look at all those things. But as we think about coming into the building, Sunday ministries aren't the only ministry to consider. John, can you share us an update on Wednesday night ministries?
Sure, but are you saying that eventually it's going to get cold?
Yeah, we live in Michigan. Right, kind of stinks.
Maybe we can stay outdoors at least till end of November, early December.
Or we can just all move down south, like some into Florida, like some of the people in our church do. Just all go together.
Head south. Hey, obviously a big part of our ministry, especially for kids and students, but even some of our adults, is our Wednesday night programming. And so not only do we have to think about Sundays, but Wednesdays, and especially September comes, that's normally when we start up. So we are thinking about it. We desire very much to get back to some of those ministries and for our adults to be able to have a prayer meeting. But there's a couple of things that we're looking at. We really are waiting to see what the schools do, and you can follow that. They're really wrestling back and forth with how to start up and how to do that safely. Just talking to a friend the other day who's a teacher in a local school district, and he said in a public survey of their community, 40% of families said they weren't sure that they would send their kids back to school even if schools opened. And around 23% said they definitely weren't going to send their kids. And then even among the teachers, there was about 12% of the teachers that said they didn't really feel comfortable coming back to teach, and that maybe around 7% of them might even consider early retirement if school started back up. So that just illustrates that within school districts, within communities, and even within churches, there's a lot of differing opinions about it. And even if we start programs, we're going to have some of both of those, from families who feel comfortable coming or bringing their kids and families who don't, and workers who may not feel comfortable coming back. So we're really following that carefully with Awana, student ministries. There's possibly some outdoor options as long as the weather would permit, where we could meet over at the pavilion and do some of our normal things. And maybe even prayer meeting, finding some kind of place that they could meet where it was safe. But that's kind of what we're thinking about, and trying to figure out, again, how do we come back to the building safely and be able to have the right protocols. And a lot of that is contingent upon what the schools do. So we're following that carefully. If you're like me, though, part of the struggle is there's so much contradictory information, and you hear stuff on the news, or you see stuff on Facebook and online. But so Phil's going to address for us just a little bit. How do you try to figure out what's true and what's not true?
Yeah, and I know you're going to be certain whatever I answer is right, but I know a lot of you have read a lot of different articles about the effectiveness of masks and the pandemic and all those different things, and we're not scientists. There seems to be a growing consensus among scientists that masks do help in some capacity. That's why a lot of countries and states are requiring them, but I know there's conflicting reports and all those kind of things. But in Kent County, we've been really fortunate. Right now, I just looked up the stats today. 99.98% of people in Kent County that have gotten coronavirus have not died at this point. Only 150 deaths. And so we look at that and we go, man, and so we look around, what's the big deal with this coronavirus? Well, on the flip side, on the east side of the state where my family's from, in Wayne County, 11% of the cases resulted in death. So 11% of the people that got it died. When we look in the U.S., it's about 3.6%, and worldwide, it's around 4.1%. Now, you can say, look at the antibody tests and say way more people got it than we have the confirmed cases, and I believe that too. And so it becomes really confusing as to what do we need to do. And I know personally three people that I knew as a child, that I was close to as a child, passed away. One of my family's uncles passed away. Another family member of someone I love dearly passed away from COVID. So a lot of times when we minimize this virus, we kind of are saying hurtful things to someone that have experienced tremendous loss. So So in this, we as an elder team have been really careful on thinking through it and understanding that this is a complex issue. There's really not easy answers to all this. And so as pastors, we can't really comment on and say, yes, masks are effective or they aren't effective, or this is the exact percentage or any of that stuff. But what we can say is, as pastors, what should our posture be? Because I'm not a scientist, but I am a pastor. And as a pastor, these are the things that I've thought of. One, is our communication building bridges or building dividers? The way we communicate on Facebook, the way we communicate to others. Are we building bridges for the gospel? Are we putting walls in place that will hinder us from sharing the good news of Jesus Christ? Secondly, are our words and our actions honoring to Christ? Philippians 4, Paul says, whatever is pure, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. The things you're posting, the things you're saying, are those characterized by those traits? Are we pointing people to Jesus? Are we in the midst of a hardship, in the midst of a struggle, are we pointing people to Jesus? And lastly, have our minds and our thoughts just been consumed with the virus and consumed with all the restrictions and consumed with the government, all these other things? Are we filling our minds daily with Christ? So our love may abound more and more in knowledge and depth of insight, as the scriptures say. So, John, can you speak to that idea of, as a pastor, what are some advice you have for people?
Sure, and not even just as a pastor, but as a believer, when things kind of get unsettled, and I'm frustrated too, and everything just kind of seems out of whack right now. We don't have our regular schedules, church life, family life, work life, everything's kind of topsy-turvy there. I'd like to go back to the basics. And I remember as we finished up our study in the book of Philippians, I remember Paul's words in chapter 1. He talked about whatever the circumstances you find yourself in, conduct yourself in a manner that's worthy of the gospel. And I think that's what Phil was just describing there. But also in chapter 4, he talked about whatever circumstances he would find himself in, that he had learned to be content. Let me just read that for you. It says, for I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. And then he says, I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. So for him, the circumstance had to do with his physical needs being met, a little bit different than us. But then verse 13, which most of us are pretty familiar with, he says, I can do all this through him who gives me strength. So Paul was saying, whatever the circumstances, it's Jesus who's going to give me the strength to be content, to be able to live in a way that I can honor the gospel. And so I just want to encourage you, we're all a little frustrated. We're all getting impatient. We want things to go back to normal. But God's in control, and he's put us in this time period for a very unique purpose and reason. And we want to grow. We want to be a good testimony. And we may have to adapt our lifestyles. We might have to adapt our ministries. But we're going to be okay. We're going to be able to be the church that God has called us to be, individually and corporately. And so, like I like to say, there's a lot of things that are uncertain, but our mission here at North Park is still the same. We want to be disciples who make disciples. And so as we go forward into September, when we normally are starting a lot of things back up, we'll make adjustments. It may not be the same, but we'll be able to be who God has called us to be.
Yeah, and my last encouragement is to just think of how you can minister to others. Are there people in your ABF that you haven't connected with during this pandemic? Are there people that you haven't seen at church and outdoor services? Are there people that you know might be struggling emotionally through this? Who can you connect with? Who can you call? Who can you minister to? Who can you drop off a meal to? And how can we be the hands and feet of Jesus in the midst of a time when the world seems chaotic and everything seems out of control? Let's live out the gospel of Jesus Christ. Let's be the hands and feet of Christ. I hope this was encouragement to you and also informative as to your future plans, and we'll see you Sunday.
All right. Love you guys.
Love you guys.